Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, okay, so welcome everyone to today's career profile interview from Net Impact Boston. My name is Lawrence Wilson, and today we are joined by Shannon Houde. Welcome, Shannon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be back with Net Impact.
Fantastic. So I guess just to sort of kick off, do you maybe want to introduce yourself and give us a very brief overview of your career so far?
Oh, that's a good question, because that's one that I teach other people to answer, and it's always, the older you get, the harder it's harder to answer. But I have had a portfolio career. I've worn many hats. I've worn a hat of recruiter, accountant, eco-entrepreneur, ecopreneur in Patagonia, Chile. I've been a conservationist at WWF, a management consultant in sustainability, both in boutiques and at Deloitte. And for the last 14 years, I've been running my own career coaching and executive coaching business, Walk of Life Coaching. I've spent the last 20 years in sustainability in what used to be called corporate social responsibility and is now kind of morphed into ESG. So I've really been on this journey of my career in parallel with watching this agenda of making a difference and having impact really evolve over these last few decades. So I'm very honored to have been able to work with more than 1,000 change leaders in my coaching business to help them to figure out what they want to do with their lives so that they can be living into their own purpose and potential, and also then to go out into the world and shape tangible and scalable impact.
That's fantastic. That's very interesting. So as I mentioned, it'd be great to talk about your career, but also we will touch on, the advice that you give others in their career as well. But just sort of thinking back, I suppose, to the kind of early stages of your career, the sort of first steps as you were setting out, did you sort of always kind of know that you wanted to work in the ESG space? Was that something you were always kind of driving at, or was it something that just evolved a bit more organically?
Yes, I think all of us in this space can probably go back to a certain aha moment, maybe, where we realized we really wanted to have a career or spend more time in this space. I mean, as a child, I used to do a lot of camping and hiking with my family, and a lot of soup kitchen volunteering through my mom's church. And so I always had this kind of the E and the S in my life. I always was very much connected to the mountains. I did a outward bound type of program when I was 16 for a month in the Rockies. And then I ended up going to University of Colorado and being a part of their outdoor program. So I've always had this outdoor kind of piece of me, and then also this giving back and volunteering and working with the elderly. I did as a teenager, working with the homeless, and just always wanting to have this kind of combination of giving back and making a difference while also earning a living. So this is actually the third business I started. The first one, funny enough, was called Closets Coordinated. So I wanted to help women to actually be empowered through what they wore to work every day. This is back when we had to dress a little nicer for the office. And then I started Encounter Patagonia, which was an ecotourism company in southern Chile in Patagonia. And now Walk of Life. So I think I've always had an entrepreneurial thread throughout my life. Probably the environmental piece and the social impact piece really came to fruition it was probably in my late 20s. I was working at Barclays Global Investors in finance and accounting, and helped them to launch their first employee volunteering program, because I had been on boards of local volunteering organizations. And I thought, well, this is strange that we don't do this at Barclays. So BGI is now under BlackRock, and they have a big program running. But I soon thereafter realized I wanted to do something crazy and different in my own career. And so in my late 20s, I think about 28, I moved to Patagonia, Chile. And this was off the back of a vacation I took, where I sat on the top of the Pucón volcano in Chile and looked down on this beautiful town of Pucón and realized there was no recycling going on, and that there was something missing here. And so that's why I went back and quit my corporate job at Barclays and sold my convertible. And unfortunately, actually also broke up with my fiance and moved to Patagonia to work for what was then called the National Outdoor Leadership School. And from there, then started my own ecotourism business. So I think, I've always had themes throughout my career that I can lead back to. And I think most of my clients have the same thing. But my aha moment was definitely sitting on top of that volcano and thinking, we can't leave our rubbish everywhere. We can't leave the trash, in the streets in these beautiful parts of the world. So that was just my first viewing of our impact, I think, from up above.
Yeah, it sounds like a really, as you say, impactful moment. Just sort of touching on that international experience, actually, because I know that's not the only place that you've worked around the world. Have you found that that's something that's kind of helped with your career over the years? That international exposure.
Yeah, great thought, because I think it's really core to who I am. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and a lot of the fellow students at my elementary school were children of ambassadors and diplomats. And so my first friends growing up were Chilean, Swedish, and Japanese. And so I've always had that lure towards the international cultures, differences, diversity, and also languages. And what that's allowed me to do in my moves. So from the US, I lived in Sicily, southern Chile, and also then in Geneva and France, as well as southern Chile. And all of those moves, I think, have allowed me to just understand this agenda, this kind of the social and environmental impacts from different lenses. And also just embrace that diversity that's so core to what we're trying to build, in business now. But yeah, I think it's helped me in that I can work with anyone and I can help anyone really in any walk of life. And I think that's how the name of my company came about, was wanting to really be all inclusive to any culture. And that's really one of my core values.
Oh, fantastic. Well, maybe now's a good time to touch on your current company. So, Walk of Life Coaching. Now, obviously, your own career journey is very, very interesting. But I mean, professionally, your job is to help those moving into these kind of roles. So, could you sort of tell us a little bit more about the sort of advice that you give, or I suppose that the role of a sort of coach plays?
Well, there's lots of different roles that coaches play. Depends on the coach, I think. And then now you'll see off the back of the pandemic, there's a lot of coaches in the market. I think where I decided to niche when I launched the business 14 years ago was really this intersection for me of my recruitment experience, business, and then my love of helping others and doing almost like a therapy, social work kind of role of really mentoring and helping others. And so I took those three themes from my background and merged them together to start the coaching business. And since then have gone through rigorous training and certification processes myself so that I can give back the most to my clients. So I basically pull from a lot of different tools that I've learned over the years, everything from an emotional intelligence toolkit to something called the Game Changer Index, which is an organometric for teams. And I've also then built up my own coaching program online. So it's an online course. It's also a book and a group coaching program, so that I can reach more people individually to help upskill them and tool them up for being able to make a career change, or to break into this sector, or to just improve on their personal branding, messaging, and how do they go out and talk about themselves to the market. So I kind of look at my business or my role as twofold. One is career coach and the other is executive coach. So it really depends on if you're looking for a role or a new job, or you're in a role and you're wanting to develop professionally, get promoted, overcome imposter syndrome, what have you. So so I think that my ultimate mission is to really help other people that feel blocked or confused or stuck to gain the clarity about where they want to be going next and the confidence to get there, and to have a partner. I look at myself as a partner throughout someone's career journey, so that they have a sounding board. They can ask the silly questions about what is that recruiter really thinking, or how do I go and, propose a promotion to my boss? These kinds of things are really sensitive and really hard to do on your own, in your own little bubble. So I think just having a partner through that, someone to be accountable to, and to help. One thing I do is I'll pull out some insights of what I'm hearing, so that we're actually going down a level below what you might think is your block, and to what are some of the other areas that that you could unpack so that you can make progress. And everything we do in coaching is a little different than therapy. Therapy, you're looking backwards in time, and coaching, you're looking forwards in time. So I end every session with, what were your insights, and what are your actions, and how you're going to take it forward. So it's very action orientated as well as insightful. And I use tangible tools and webinars in my book and things like that, so that people can really kind of go back to their own lives and sift through the content and learn at their own pace as well.
Mm-hmm. And so do you find that the majority of people come to you with a sort of specific goal in mind, X promotion or new job, whatever, or is it more that most people sort of see it as an ongoing sort of process?
I think most people actually do look at it as like an urgent need, right? Like, I am frustrated in my job, or I've been laid off, or I want a promotion, or I'm starting a new job and I want to make sure I succeed, or I don't know how to manage the politics internally, or I've got a really hard, difficult boss. So there's always something like quite central usually to the issues that they're trying to solve or overcome. But through our journey together, they start to realize, actually, this is a holistic cycle that, we're never done. We're never done developing, building our careers, our skills, our networks of common stakeholders. So we are never done. And that's why I built it out as what I call the whole journey. It's one of my offerings, so that you see how each stage of your career keeps circling back, right? So I start with shift careers, then you land the job, then you ensure success and an onboarding, and then you grow your influence when you're in the role, and then it'll circle back, because you're going to hopefully be constantly growing and changing in your own career development.
That's very interesting. And as a sort of kind of expert in the industry, I suppose, have you found that there are a lot more of these kind of roles available these days? Have you seen sort of corporate social responsibility, pardon me, or ESG or whatever, grow over the years?
Oh my gosh. I mean, yes. I mean, when I got my MBA in international business back in 2002, there were no master's programs at all in this space. And so I created my own curriculum around corporate social responsibility under an international development umbrella, is what it was called at the time. There was nothing around sustainability back then. So I think the language has evolved from, we used to call it CSR, corporate social responsibility. And as we talked, it's gone on to sustainability, social impact, ESG. There's lots of different ways to talk about it now. And with that evolution, it has gained a huge amount of momentum, both in terms of government requiring regulatory requirements of companies to report and disclose on their activities. It's also so government and business. So business is responding to that, but also business has been responding to their consumer pressures, which is fantastic, because it's really, putting their feet to the fire around the risk and opportunity if they don't, meet their own sustainability goals or set the right ones. It affects the talent agenda for lots of companies too, because the newer generations or the younger generations are all wanting to work for responsible organizations. So it is, in terms of the actual number of jobs, it's amazing. I mean, you go on LinkedIn now and there's just hundreds of jobs all the time with these keywords in them. And we've seen a huge uptick both in the role of chief sustainability officer, all the way down to, junior people starting out with doing the reporting and research. So it looks completely different than it did 20 years ago. And this is very exciting, because those of us that have been working on these issues for a long time are finally seeing the financial markets have caught up. So I don't know if you know about, during COVID, we had Larry Fink of of BlackRock who actually said to other CEOs, guys, it's time to step up. We all need to be on this journey together. We all need to be concerned with our footprints. And I'm not quoting him well on that, but it's online if you want to read it. And basically that was a big shifting point, because it was showing that our financial markets are also seeing the value of investing in sustainable companies and stocks. And we now have the time behind us to show those returns, and how they actually help investors to maximize their returns. So I think all of that really was a big shift kind of during the COVID year in 2020, that the momentum just is light years different. We see it on the front page of every newspaper now. Everybody's using the language, everyone understands what it is. Whereas 20 years ago, we didn't have any of that, right? So not to mention the jobs in companies with these titles.
No, it's really nice to hear, actually. Often, it's funny because often when we do these interviews as part of this series, there does always tend to be a sort of entrepreneurial sort of focus to it. A lot of the people we interview have always kind of have this entrepreneurial experience, and often it's because they say, I was sort of looking around for these kind of jobs and they weren't there, so I decided to do it myself. So it's nice to know that maybe that's changing, that not everyone has to sort of start their own thing in order to sort of work in this space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's why I started Encounter Patagonia, because there was nothing else for me to do. I'd have to start my own company to be able to work in this space. So you're right. Now there's, every organization really seems to have somebody with this remit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that must have been, so when you started Encounter Patagonia, I mean, you mentioned it was a pretty sort of drastic sort of change. I mean, was that your kind of first entrepreneurial experience? I mean, how did you find that? That must have been quite a jump.
Yeah, it was a big risk, but I think I had read a book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and had taken a Stephen Covey 5-day course on the 7 habits of highly effective people, where we had to write up our own our own eulogy. And there was lots of things going on at that time. And I just thought, I really need to do something that's kind of brave and bold and different. And so I took the risk. And at, my late 20s, I didn't have family, kids and husband or anything yet. So it was a good time to make the jump. And I think, a lot of my clients are risk averse, right? And should I leave my job? I'm so miserable. And how do I find another job when I have a job? Should I go work for myself and just become a freelancer? Should I work, in a big company, a small company? And all those decisions can be quite overwhelming. I mean, for me, I always had an entrepreneurial kind of, jive to my life. As I said, back in my 20s, I started the Closets Coordinated, which didn't go as big as Encounter Patagonia, and certainly didn't have the longevity that Walk of Life now has. But I was always looking for ways to create solutions and to engage people and to connect people with nature and with business and with themselves. And so I think those themes, plus my entrepreneurial spirit, is just how I ended up where I am. I also was working at Deloitte when I got pregnant with my first son. It was on my first day I found out I was pregnant, which is not good timing. And I think that was a tipping point for me as well, is that I really didn't see how I was going to be the mom I wanted to be, working for a big corporate, especially externally, client facing. So that was why I decided to spin off on my own and do what I love doing, which is, very strangely enough, writing resumes, because nobody likes to write resumes. And so honestly, I could write resumes all day, every day, and I do. And I still love it. And so I think that was like another aha moment, like, well, I can do something that other people really need and don't want to do, because I love doing it. And so it's about finding that market need, really, isn't it? When you think about being an entrepreneur. But it has its challenges. It can be lonely. It's a month to month, hand to mouth, depends on your model and what you're trying to build out. But it's totally possible. And it's also possible to be really happy and grow within, an organization. So I think it depends on who you are and what really, how you work best and what your vision is for your lifestyle.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's very, very heartening to hear that, definitely. So just because I see we're coming to the end of our time, so just couple more questions. So if just sort of thinking about our listeners and our sort of Net Impact community, if there is someone listening to this who is interested in perhaps changing their career or moving into the ESG space, what sort of advice would you offer to that person? You know, what are the kind of top few things they should be looking at to tick off the list?
Great. Yeah. A lot of them are in my book, but which is called Good Work, how to find a career that makes a difference in the world. But if they want to think, holistically about the process, one big piece of advice I always say is don't just get on job boards and start shifting your resume story and your cover letters and just start applying to jobs. That is way later in the process. So early on in the process, you've got to get really clear. Who are you? What are your skills? What are your values? What are your traits? What are the criteria you want in a job? What issues do you want to be solving? What kind of sectors and what size of company do you want to be working in? So you start with this whole deep dive around who are you and what matters to you before you go out and do what I call a soft job search, which is researching the market to see which kinds of roles and companies and people would fit best for you. And only after that do you then start building up your own personal branding tools, because those branding tools are a marketing tool, like a resume, a cover letter, a bio, a LinkedIn profile. They are all marketing you, the product. And so if you're not speaking to an audience in a way that's going to resonate and be compelling, you're going to not get to the top of that recruiter's pile. And so it's going to become a very vicious circle for you to make all of these applications and not get any traction. And that's what a lot of people end up coming to me with is, I know I can do these jobs. I keep applying. I'm applying to a lot of jobs, but I'm not getting any traction. And that's usually because they've missed the first few steps before applying of doing the groundwork, both understanding yourself and how to position yourself, but also understanding your audience and doing that research on the market long before you get out there and start throwing your hat in the ring. And then that all helps you to be much more focused in your job search. So you're not just applying to everything everywhere, again, casting a really wide net. That's the biggest myth. You don't want to cast a wide net. You want to stay extremely focused. And the more focused you can get, the more opportunities you will actually get in that space versus throwing your hat in a lot of, rings, but not getting any traction. So it's a little counterintuitive, but it's an absolute necessity if you want to have success in the job search.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting. I think that's definitely something we've all, well, personally anyway, fallen into that trap. Brilliant. All right. What was the name of your book again? Just remind me.
Oh, I can show it to you right here.
Oh, that's very convenient.
Good Work, How to Build a Career That Makes a Difference in the World. And this is my 13, actually as an extra step, it's a 14-step program in the book. I have an online course that's 13 steps. And I'm just about to build out a second online course to support it as well around interviewing. So I also have a lot of blogs and share a lot of content on LinkedIn and on my website. I host something called Coffee and Connect every month with a real world practitioner speaking about their day in the life and building that community where you can share ideas and resources with a wider network. And that's been really phenomenal. We've been running that since the beginning of COVID. So yeah, always happy to have anybody reach out to me as well. I've, as I said, been volunteering with Net Impact for more than 20 years. It's my most favorite organization to give back to. So please feel free to reach out to me directly as well.
Marvelous. Well, thank you so much. And we'll share all of this information when we post this recording. But thank you so much, Shannon. This really was super insightful and very, very interesting. And yeah, we'll look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye-bye.
Great, Lawrence. Thanks so much.